तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदम् माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत्। अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु। तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ओमित्येतदक्षरमुद्गीतमुपासीत ओमिति ह्युद्गायते तस्योपव्याख्यानम्। तेजः अतः तथा हि आह। तेजः अतः तेज मीन्स अग्नि अतः अस्माद् वायोः जायते। Agni is born or is created from Vayu. He yatah because tatha aha. Tatha means Vayujanyatvam. Aha. Shruti. Shruti says that the fire is born of air. And therefore the conclusion is that the fire is born of air. What was the name for the sutra? The Sutrakara is taking up the discussion of the creation of the five elements. The space and air have been discussed. The fire is taken up next. And each element seems to get a different adhikaran because even though discussion is very similar, still there are some differences. Either in the Purva-paksha or in Samshaya, some differences being there, each element has warranted a separate adhikaranam. Tat teja asrujate iti vayoho agni iti cha shrutyoho virodha astinava iti sandehe. Once again, coming back to Chhandogya Upanishad, it says tat teja asrujata. Tat means that Sat or Brahma created teja, created fire. It looks like then Brahman created fire, meaning that fire was born of Brahman, so it will look. And Taittiriya Upanishad says, Vayo Agni, the fire is born of Vayu or air. So whether these two statements say different things, that is fire born of Brahman or is it born of Vayu, or both are right. It is Sandehe. So Virodha Astinava. Whether both the Shrutis say the same thing or do they say different things. If they say different things, if one Shruti says that fire is born directly from Brahman, and another Shruti says fire is born of air, then it is different accounts. Therefore, whether the two Shrutis are saying same thing or not is Sandehe. Samanyat, Samanya, Utpatti Asambhavepi, Brahmavayoho, Samanyayoho, Tejo Rupa. The idea is that in case of the Vayu, so San Matram, no, in case of San, Brahman, in the previous Adhikana, is Brahman born of Brahman? Is Samanya born of Samanya? Or is Brahman born of some Vikara of Brahman, meaning Samanya is born of Vishesha? Or Brahman is born of nothing? So conclusion was, Samanyat Samanya Utpatti Asambhavepi. Samanya cannot be born of Samanya. Vishesha can be born of Samanya. Meaning gold cannot be born of gold. An ornament which is a Vishesha, a particular state of gold, can be said to be born of gold. Brahmavayoho, Samanyayoho, Tejo Rupa, Vishesha Upadanatam Sambhavan. However, in case of this, Brahman also is Samanya, Vayu also is Samanya. Therefore, both of them can become the Upadanam, the material cause of fire. And so, Asti Virodha iti. That is what the Purvapakshi says. So, Vashakara said, Chhandogya Sanmulatvam Tejaha Shravitam Taittiriya Ketu Vayu Mulatvam. So, Chhandogya appears to say that Tejaha Asrujata. Doesn't say that Brahman is born of Tat. It says, that Vayu, the Tejas is born of Tat. That Tat or Brahman created Tejaha. So that is not a very specific statement. Whereas the statement of Taittiriya Upanishad, Vayoho Agni, is very specific. Tatra Tejo Yovinim Prati Shruti Vipratipattao. There seems to be a contradiction between these two Shrutis with reference to the source of Teja, the source of fire. Praptam Tavad Brahmayonikam Tejaheti. So Purvapakshi says Brahmayonikam Teja, Teja or fire is born directly of Brahman or Sat. Kutaha? For what reason do you say? Sadeva iti upakramya tat teja asrujati upadeshat. Because Sadeva Somya idam agrase tat, that means Sat, that Sat created teja, Sat created fire. This is what the Shruti says. Sarva vijnana pratignyayascha brahma prabhavatve sarvasya sambhavat. Also the pratignya. Sarva vijnana pratignya, that everything is known by knowledge of one. That is possible if everything is born of Brahman. Because when you know the upadana karanam, material cause, then the effects are as well known. For everything to be known, when Brahman is known, it follows that everything must be created or the effect of Brahman. Brahman must be the material cause of everything. Then only by knowing Brahman, everything can be known. So that pratigna also requires that fire should be born of Brahman. Further, tad jalan iti cha avishesha shrutehe. Tad jalan, this universe is born of tat. Tajja is sustained by tat, tadan. It merges back into tat, tat, talla. Avishesha means what? Without any krama or sequence. He just says everything is born of Brahman. Without giving any sequence as to what is first and what is second, the sequence or order is not given. Everything is just born. That's a general statement. This is called Avishesha Shruti. Vayoho Agni iti Vishesha Shruti, which says that Agni is born of Vayu. Whereas this says everything is born of Brahman. Further, etasmat jayate prana iti upakramya shrutyantare sarvasya avisheshena brahmajatva upadeshat. Again, the statement in Chhandogya Upanishad also says that everything is born of Brahman. Etasmat jayate prana. Prana is born of Brahman. Manas sarvendriyani sha, mind, all sense organs, kham vayu jyotirabha, prithvi vishwasya dharani. All the five elements also are so sense organs, mind, all five elements, everything is born of tat etasmat, from this Brahman. Taittiriya Kesha Tatsa tapas tattva idam saram ajrita asrajata yadidam kincha. So this can be a discussion also. Whether the universe is born simultaneously, yugapat, or is it evolved in a certain sequence? So as Chhandogya Upanishad says, there is an evolution from Brahman, space, air, fire, water, earth. In this way it evolved. So sometimes we find the statements of order or sequence. In some other case, it just says everything is born. Therefore, also question can come, avishesha shravana tasmat then. So avishesha, meaning that there does not seem to be a particular order of creation, everything is born of Brahman. But then, how to explain this? Vayoho Agni is a very specific statement. From Vayu, fire is born. Then, Tasma Vayo Agni iti Kramopadesho Drashtavya. So, Vayoho Sakashat Agni Jayate or Agni Sambhuta or Vayoho Anantaram Agni Sambhuta. So this fifth case, that is why this Suprasapad Adhikara. Because here the content, the Puru Paksha is in a different way. The fifth case, whether the fifth case is the Apadana Panchami, meaning the source, or is it the Panchami, which Kramartha, which means that, so it says a sequence or order. Of course, when you interpret Vayoho Agni as Krama, after Vayu the Agni came, then Vayoho Anantaram Agni, one word has to be added there. That's important. It can be done. If it is possible to interpret Vayoho Agni is Vayoho Anantaram Agni. After the fire, the air was born, and then fire was born. Or after air was created, fire was created. Evam prapte uchyate. So Sutrakar says, when this Purva Paksha is now made or raised, uchyate, the answer is given, teja atah jayate, let's apply that. Teja atah means what? Etasmat means what? Matarishvana. From Matarishva, from the air, the fire is born. Kasman. So how do you conclude that? So Purvapakshi says, why do you say that? Tathahi aha. So tathahi aha. Vayoho Agni iti. That's what the Upanishad says. Vayoho Agni. Meaning that we think that this statement is the strongest statement. The Vishesha statement, a statement which says specifically the order of creation, is a stronger meaning that more powerful statement than the statements which do not talk about any order. Now we continue from that point on page 515. So tatra prashnapurvam hetumaha kasmat, so hetu is stated there. Vayo agnihiti aha. Reason why do you say that? The fire is born of Vayu? Because that's what the Shruti says. Hetumeva vyatireka-dvara vivranoti. So in this sutra, teja ataha iti pratigna. Tatha is the hetu. Hetumeva vyatireka-dvara vivranoti. Bhashyakara explains that hetu to be vyatireka, unlike. So unlike. Avyavahita hetu. So Bhashyakara says, Avyavahita tejasaha brahmajatve sati asati vayujatve vayo agnihi iti yam shruti kadarthita syat. Avyavahite tejasa brahmajatve. Vyavadhana means interference. Avyavahite without interference, meaning without distance. That is, if teja or fire is born directly from Brahman, that's called avyavahite. Tejasa brahmajatve sati. If as you claim that teja or fire is born directly of Brahman, then asati vayujatve, which means that teja or fire is not born of Vayu, is born of Sat or Brahman, as you say. Then how do you explain this to the Vayu Agni? The specific statement that Agni is born of Vayu. So kadarthita syat, bhaditartha syat. And that Shruti has to be discarded. The Shruti has to be discarded, meaning that then it is negated. It is discarded. It is contradicted. Kadar pidita sahat also, meaning that it will be militated against. Says Nyaya Nirnaya, Tejasaha Vayonitvam Panchami Shrutya Nirdharitam. That Tejas of fire has its source in Vayu is determined from the fifth case, Vayo Agnihiti. Brahma Yonitvam Dutasya Bahubhavana Ashamsanalingat Avagatam Bahubhavana Ashamsanalingat Avagatam Namaha. Bahubhavana Ashamsana Bahuvana Ichha. Ashamsana means Bahubhavana Ashamsana Lingat. That Bahusyam Prajaya. Brahman said, may I become many, may I be born, and then it created everything. So therefore, it is Bahubhavana Ashamsa, the desire to become many. From that you conclude that everything is directly born of Brahman. The Shruti just says that may I become many. From that you conclude that everything is born of Brahman. So there is a linga. Shruti does not say directly that everything is born of Brahman, but you conclude from the linga or a chinha or a mark that everything is born of Brahman. Atah Shrutya lingam bhaditva. But Shruti means a direct statement is stronger than linga or an inferential statement. So we infer that everything is that Agni was born of Brahman from the statement. So inferential statement is weaker than a statement which is direct. So lingam bhaditva vayonitvam mukhyam adaya. That the fire has its source in Vayu. Lingam paramparaya brahmayo nitva vishayam vivakshmaya nyayana. So then that lingam, that everything is born of Brahman, can also be okay if you say that first air is created, then Vayu is created, then fire is created, and everything is created that way. So, or that if first space is created, from there Vayu is created, from there air is created, then also sequentially everything is created from Brahman. Because the Vedanta Siddhanta is that it is not that the fire is created from Vayu, fire is created from Brahman which has assumed the state of Vayu. So Brahman appears or assumes the state of space from which Vayu is born, and Brahman has appeared the state of Vayu from which fire is born, and that way it is born of Brahman. So Vayunitvam Mukhyamada, so Parambam Vivakshamanena Nyayana, the Nyaya will be stated as to how a statement which involves an additional word is weaker than a statement that does not involve an additional upapada, it is said. Brahmavayu samuchayameva abhivagamayati iti bhavaha. Therefore, it is born of Vayu directly and also born of Brahman because Vayu is not apart from Brahman. Therefore, Panchami Shrutehe Uktam Gatim Purvavadi Smarayati. So Purvavadi says, wait a minute, we told you that Vayu Agni, that Panchami Shruti also can be explained in the sense of order or sequence. So Purvapaksha says that Nanu Kramartha Esha Bhavishyate Iti Uktam. You say that Esha Kramartha Bhavishyate. This Vayu Agni, that Panchami can also be Kramartha, can also be to show a sequence or an order that we already say. Meaning that we have given an alternative explanation of why the fifth case is used. Then why do you insist upon your position that Panchami must be only Apadana Panchami, must tell the source why? So that's a Nyaya now they will tell you why. See here, look at Ratnaprabha. Same thing, but Vayoho Tejas Prakrutitvam Panchami Shrutya Nirharitam. Then Vayu is the material cause of fire is determined from Vayoho Agni, the fifth case. Nacha Kalpitasya Upadanatva Sambhava. But one argument was only what is akalpita, what is real alone can be adhishthanam and not what is imagined, projected. Meaning that rope can be the substratum of snake, but the imagined snake cannot be the substratum of some other thing. So where there is rope, you can have the Brahma or division of snake. But that kalpita snake, that imaginary snake itself cannot become adhishthanam of something else, that from that snake you imagine something else, because it's not there. What is there can become the adhishthanam, not what is not there. Oh, Brahman alone is real, everything else is mithya. So how can Vayu, that is mithya, be the adhisthana of fire? This was the question. So we say that Kalpitasya upadanatva nacha kalpitasya upadanatva sambhava. Kalpitam or projected thing cannot become the adhishthanam, substratum or superimposition, but can become definitely the material cause. Adhishthanatva asambhavevi mrudadivat parinamitva sambhava. Adhishthanatva asambhavevi. Kalpita snake cannot become adhishthanam for another something else. On the snake, you imagine, I don't know, some mala or something like that, cannot be. But mrudalivat parinamitva sambhavat. The snake that you see can move. You know, for example, sometimes in the desert you see the ocean, the mirage water. And then in mirage water you can see that there are waves. All that parinama is possible. Mirage water remains mirage water and then shows its different state. Mirage water cannot become something else there, but mirage water, remaining mirage water, can show some parinama or some modifications. Like clay, which is also mithya, but can be the upadana karanam, parinami karanam, can undergo modification to become parts, etc. Sutastu brahmana chandogye srashtutva matram shrutam na upadanatva. Even Chhandogya says, Tat teja asujata. Brahman created fire. It says it created fire. It doesn't say in what sequence it is created. So, Brahmana srashtutva matram uktam. Shudam. No upadanatvam. It doesn't say that fire is born directly of Brahman. It says just Brahman created fire. Nacha bahushyamedi. So bahushyam prajaya. May I become many, may I be born, iti. Then those two words are together. Karya bhede kshanlingat. Not two separate but one. Karya abheda ikshanalingat. Upadanatva siddhi. Nacha bahusyam. Just because Brahman said, may I become many. So what does it say? Karya abheda ikshana. So kamayata bahusyam. Or tat aikshata bahusyam. It ikshanam, it deliberated. Bahusyam, may I become many. So this is a linga. We say that Brahman deliberated ikshanam, Brahman saw, Brahman deliberated, and Brahman became many. So, karya abheda, which means that whatever is created is non-separate from Brahman. When Brahman says, may I become many, so whatever has become cannot be separate from Brahman. So that says, karya abheda lingam and ikshana lingam. Two lingas are there. Bahusyam is, so bahusyam itself is also a statement, ikshana. And when one thing becomes many, like gold becomes many ornaments, then also ornaments are non-separate from gold. So, this is true. But that does not mean that it is upadanam. Does not mean that Brahman is immediately the cause of fire. Linga shrutehe baliyastvena shruti avirodhena lingasya neyatvat. Shruti is always stronger than lingam. So lingam must be interpreted to accommodate the shruti and not the other way around. So how do you explain linga? Nayanam cha ittam vayoho brahma ananyatvat vayujasyapi tejasa brahma prakritikatvam avirdhamidi siddhanta grantha ashaya. So how do you explain the linga? Ittam. In this manner it can be explained that vayoho brahma ananyatvat. Since first of all space is born of Brahman, therefore space is non-separate from Brahman. And Brahman as space then creates Vayu. The Vayu is also non-separate from space, which is non-separate from Brahman. That Vayu also is non-separate from Brahman. Like from a lump of gold you make a bar, from that you make a rod, from that you make a wire. So wire is non-separate from rod, rod is non-separate from bar is not separate from lump, etc. But then from the wire, then you make the rings. From the rings, you make a chain. So chain is immediately made of rings. Although you can say that paramparaya chain also is made of gold. So from the gold you make a bar, and from that you make a rod, and from that you make a wire, from that you make those rings, from that you make chain. Then chain can be said to be made of rings immediately, but you can also say that chain is made of gold, paramparaya. Therefore, Vayujasyapi Tejasah Brahma Prakritikam Aviruddham. Therefore, even though fire is born of Vayu, since Vayu is non-separate from Brahman, therefore fire also is non-separate from Brahman. And that way, fire also is created from Brahman. Just as we can say that chain is created from gold. Iti Siddhanta Grantha Ashaya. This is the Ashaya. This is the intention or the purport of the Siddhanta here. Again, says Nyayana, na kramarthatvam panchamyaha yuktam. That panchami should not be in the sense of krama. Purvottar vakya upadanena apadana sattva pratitehe iti pariharati. When you take the Purva Vakya and Uttar Vakya, Purva Vakya Vayo Agni, subsequently Prithivya Oshadaya Oshadibhya Annam, it goes on. So the Shruti is like this: Tasmadva etasmad atmana akasha sambhutah. Akashat vayu sambhutah. Vayo agni sambhutah. Agnehe apa sambhutah. Advya prithvi sambhutah. Prithivyaha oshadayah sambhutah. Like that it goes. Everywhere that sambhuta must be supplied. And so, not only the fifth case is in case of Vayu, etc., in case of, so in 5 elements you may have a problem as to whether it is sequence or what. When it comes Prithivyaha Oshadaya, then it is very evident that Oshadaya are born of Prithvi. So there is no question there that there is sequence there, that Oshadis or the herbs and the plants are born of Prithvi. So that is fifth case definite. That Panchami is Apadana Panchami is very clear. So in Uttar Vakya, subsequent statement, the Panchami is Apadana Panchami, so it's likely that the earlier Panchami also are Apadana Panchami. So Purva Uttar Vakya Upadanena, when you take the Purva Vakya and later Vakya, Upadana Sattva Pratite, it looks that the Panchami is meant for Upadanam, meaning that it is source, or Apadana as a source, Pariharti. So this is how the answer is given, Naiti. So Bhashyakara says, Naiti Brumaha Tasmadva Etasmad Atmanaha Akasha Sambhutah Iti Purastar Sambhavati Apadanasya Atmanaha Panchami Nirdeshat Tasyevacha Sambhavatehe Iha Adhikarat Parastadapi cha Tat Adhikare Prithivyaha Oshadayah Iti Apadana Panchami Darshanat Vayoho Agnihi Iti Apadana Panchami Eva Esha Iti Gamyate. So Purvottar Vakya Upadana. What is Purva Vakya? Tasmadva etasmad atmanah akasha sambhutah. From that Brahman which is this self, the space, is born. Now, there is definitely Apadana Panchami. There is no sequence yet because space is the first one. So that Panchami, Atmana Akasha Sambhuta. That Panchami is very clearly Apadana Panchami, meaning telling us the source of space is Atma or Brahman. Iti Purastat Sambhavati Apadana is one word, Sambhavati Apadanasya. So what is Sambhava? The Kriya Utpatti. So Sambhavati Apadana means the source of creation, The source of the act of creation. Sambhava is act of creation. Sambhavati, that's the way of writing, Sambhavati means that act of creation. Sambhavati Apadana. Apadana means source. The source of the act of creation is definitely Atma. So that Panchami definitely says the source of act of creation or origination. Sambhavati Apadanasya Atmana iti Panchami Nirdeshat. So Atmana says that the Atma is the source of origination of space. It is very clear. There is no contention there. No contention is whether. So Akashad Vayu Agni Adhyah Prithvi with reference to the other four elements is the question. Tasyevacha Sambhavate Iha Adhikarat. So that Sambhavati or origination is the context here, Vayu Agni. Then also, that Panchami also is in the context of origination. Parastadapija tad adhikara. And the same adhikara means the same torque of origination continues. Prusivyaha Oshadeti Apadana Panchami Darshanat. Then it says, Prusivya from Pruthivi Oshadaya. The herbs and plants and vegetables are born. Iti Apadana Panchami. There also there is no question that Prusivya Oshadaya, that is Apadana Panchami. Oshadis have the source in Prithvi, which is very evident to us. We don't see Brahman creating Oshadis emerging from Brahman. We see Oshadis or herbs and plants emerging from us. Therefore, Prithivya Oshadaya also is Apadana Panchami, meaning that Prithvi is the source of the origination of Oshadis or herbs. Therefore, now, in the beginning of Apadana Panchami, in the same context, the context of Sambhava, Sambhavati is all through, in which the Purvakya, Atmana is very clearly Apadana Panchami, the Uttar Vakya, Prasivya also is Apadana Panchami. So it makes sense that in between also the Panchami is Apadana Panchami. Therefore, Vayu Agni iti Apadana Panchami Vaisha iti Gamyate. Therefore, we can conclude very logically that the Panchami employed in the in-between also is Apadana Panchami. See, everywhere the questions are different, that is why adhikaras are different, Even though the elements, creation of elements seems to be, but then everywhere the questions are different. And in that process, the Sutraka and Bhashyakar also are able to reconcile with many other statements. Tajjalan and Bahusyam and Etasmad Atman, etc. So Etasmad Jaya, all these statements also are reconciled. Says Ratnaprabha, Vayo Agni Sambhuta. That's its supply. Iti Vakye Sambandhad Ityartha. So Vayo Agni, then it is Sambhuta is to be added. So Vayo Agni Sambhuta iti Vakye Sambandhad. Apadana Panchami. So Tat Adhikare Parastat Apicha Tat Adhikare means what? Sambhuti Adhikare. So Tasyevacha Sambhavatehi Yeh Adhikarat. In case of the Vayu and Agni also, that Sambhavati is the context. Tad adhikare, sambhuti adhikare, in the case of, in the context origination, prasivya, ushadaya, same context continues. Therefore, okay. So, adhikara or prakarana, same thing. Say Nyaya Nirnay, prakaranad upadanaksha apadanakaraka abhidhayatvam panchamya siddham. Prakarana means the same context is there. So there must be consistency in the same prakarana. So upadanaksha apadana that's a karaka. So apadana is one of the karaka. Is in case of creation, that karaka, creation is an act. When you talk about an action, then karaka has a very important placement there, place. So there were apadana panchami is one of the karaka. So karaka abhidayatvam panchamya siddham. So first immediate impression will be Vayu Agni is that it is apadana panchami because apadana is one of the karakas. Tat parityajya padarthantara yoga asiddha na kalpayitum shakyate. Then that's the next sentence. So giving up that padarthantara yoga asiddha, that its association with another word is not proper. And so, let us read Ratnava also. Nirapeksha karaka vibhakte upapada sapeksha vibhakti apekshaya prabhalatvacha na kramartha panchami. Nirapeksha karaka vibhakte Vayu Agni, that apadana panchami is nirapeksha. In itself it tells you that this is the apadana panchami, it is karaka, it is a source. However, if you imagine a krama, then you have to imagine Vayu anantaram agni, Vayu urdhvam agni. One word has to be supplied. Upapada sapeksha vibhakti. So, if you want to interpret Vayu agni as a sequence, then upapada. Then one word has to be prefixed. Upa is prefix. So upapada, a word has to be prefixed. What's the prefix? Urdhvam or anantaram. So then there is a kalpana involved there. You have to supply something which is not specifically stated. Therefore, so prabhalatvad na kramartha panchami. So you have to, the kalpana is that you have to supply that word which is not stated by Shruti. It is your own kalpana. And so where there is an interpretation which involves no kalpana, that's called nirapeksha. This is an interpretation which involves kalpana, that is sapeksha. And so nirapeksha does not involve kalpana, is certainly better than that, then it involves kalpana. That's the argument, apicha. So Bhashyakara says, apicha vayoho urdhvam agnis sambhutah iti kalpyah upapadartha yogah kluptastu karakartha yogah vayoho agnis sambhutah iti. Which further, Vayu udam agni sambhuta iti kalpya upapadartha yoga. If you want to interpret the fifth case as a sequence, then you supply an additional word. After Vayu, the fire was created. Call it urdhvam or anantaram. Urdhvam means anantaram. It is a upapadam vina. Panchami matrat kramo na bhati. Merely Vayu Agni does not tell you a krama or sequence unless you add a word after Vayu, the fire is created. So that word after must be added. Otherwise, that Vayu does not convey the idea of a sequence. So Urdhvam means anantaram iti upapadam vina panchami matrat kramo na bhati iti kalpya upapadartha yoga. Therefore, you have to supply a word which is prefixed, that is anantaram or urdhvam. Whereas Prakrutakhya apadana karakatvam tu nirapeksha panchamya bhati. Whereas Prakrutyakhya means, Prakriti means what? The source. Prakrutyakhya upadana karakam. Whereas Vayo, Agni, that Panchami, the first interpretation can be that Vayu is the source of Agni. And so, Nirapeksha Panchamya Bhati, that Panchami, without the addition of any word, clearly conveys the apadanatvam or the source of origination, whereas sequence can be understood only by supplying a word. Visheshata atra prakaranad apadanarthatvam panchamya kluptam. Specifically because the context is of creation or origination. And in the beginning also there is apadana panchami, at the end also apadana panchami is there. Therefore, in between apadana panchami is there, is kluptam, nishchitam, it is determined. Whereas, if you want to interpret this vayoho as a sequence, then you will supply a prefix of word urdhvam, anantaram, after. So, kluptena cha kalpyam sati virode badhyam. Klupta means what is already determined. Kalpyam means what is imagined. So, what is already determined, that vayo agni is the apadana panchami, is naturally stronger than the Kramartha Panchami, where you to supply a word which is your imagination, which Shruti has not stated. Sati Virode, in that, in what is clearly determined and what is to be imagined, if there is a Viroda contradiction, then what is imagined has to be discarded in favor of what is determined by the Shruti. It is Sthiti, so that's the Sthiti. So Bhashyakara says, Tasmat Esha Shrutihi Vayo Nitvam Tejasaha Avagamayati. Tasmat Esha Shrutihi. Therefore, Vayo Agni in the Shruti is Vayo Nitvam Tejasaha Avagamayati. It makes us understand that the Tejas of fire has its source in Vayu, in air. So says Nyayendra, Shruti balat tejasa vayujatve tad baladeva brahmajatmapi tasya asthayam. Alright, Shruti balat tejasa vayujatve. On the strength of the Shruti, you say that the fire has its source in Vayu because Vayoho Agni is the Apadana Panchami, and therefore this fire has its source in Vayu. On the basis of Shruti you are saying it. Okay. Then Tad Baladeva, but the other Shruti also we have quoted, understand. Brahma Jatmavi Tasyasthayam. Elsewhere, however, on the strength of the Shruti you can also conclude that fire is born of Brahman. Iti Shrutyoho mitho viroda syad. Therefore, the Shrutis are mutually contradictory. Iti shankate, that shanka is raised, nanu iti. So Bhashyakara says, Nanu itarapi shrutihi brahmayo nitvam tejasaha avagamayati tattejah asrujata iti. See, all of this is from Bhashyakara. Sutrakara only says one sutra. Tejah, atha, tathai. But then all these different, the Purva Pakshas and Uttara, all of this is all by Bhashyakara. We imagine that somebody must have taught, I don't know who must have taught Bhashyakara really, but anyway, they say that he studied all this from Govinda Padacharya, which I guess he must have anyway. When? So at the age of 12, this Vashyakara, Shankaracharya goes to, Govinda Padacharya. They just 16, he writes this Bhashya on Vishnu Sahasranama. So this is all Ishvara, this is all coming from Ishvara. Of course, we cannot deny the tradition, but still, that is the tradition, no doubt. But I don't think Govinda Padacharya needed to give lectures and lectures and lectures and lectures, No. I think it was still like Sutrakara says sutras, So that way the teacher must have taught. And so much is emerging from that, how the mind must be working. And this Bhashya of Shankaracharya on Brahma Sutra is impeccable. People have tried, to shake it and then, people get frustrated because they cannot find any looseness about it. That is Shankaracharya. Then of course they try some other ways as the Purva-Pakshis are trying and come up with different interpretations. But those are not impressive. People who are neutral, they can very clearly see the strength of this Bhashya. So here there is other Shruti which appears to say that fire has its source in Brahman. How about that? So says, Nanu itarapi Shruti Brahma yonitvam tejasa avgamay tat teja asujata iti. Tat teja asujata. Brahman created fire. So it says that fire emerged from Brahman. So when Shruti again sends the Shruti now, Vayo Agni, so your conclusion is Agni has its source in Vayu, but Tat Teja Asrujata, that created fire, also appears to say that fire is born of Brahman. How about that? Then it says, Vayo Agni iti Sakshat Tejasa Vayojatma Muchyate. Vayo Agni is very clear that from Vayu the fire is born, Sakshat, immediately. Tat Teja Asuri to Akash Vayu Dwara Tasya Brahmajatma api Virodha Samadhi iti. Whereas it created fire, it can be that it became air, a space, then became air, and then became fire. So it can be that Tat Teja Asujata can be interpreted that way also, without contradicting anything. And therefore, Virodha Samadhi Samadatte. There is no Virodha between the two. Bhashyakara says, Na tasyaha parampariyajatvepi avirodhat. Tasyaha parampariyajatvepi, meaning that as far as that Shruti is concerned, it can also that Shruti can convey also the idea is that the elements are born in sequence, one after the other. So even when you take that is a sequence, that will not contradict the Shruti, Tat Teja Asrujata Parampariya. So one by one it created the elements, it can say. So Parampariyatva Avirodhat, the Shruti is not contradicted, even if we interpret the Shruti in the sense of Parampara, in the sense of sequence, then also the Shruti that Brahman created fire will not be contradicted. Whereas to say that Vayu Agni will be contradicted, we take Parampara. So Avirodham eva sadhayati. How there is no Virodha, Bhashyakara explains that Yadapi. Yadapi hi akasham vayam cha srishtva vayu bhavapannam brahma tejah asrujata iti kalpyate tadapi brahmajatvam tejasah na virudhyate. So, parampariyatma vyavahar. Yadapi, even if you thus interpret that Shruti, that Akasham Vayam Srishtva, Brahman first created space, then created Vayu, then Vayu Bhavapannam Brahma, then Brahman which has now attained the state of Vayu, So when we say Brahman created space, it means that Brahman got modified, or Brahman now appears as space, and Brahman that appeared as space now appears as Vayu, appears as Agni. In that case also, Vayu Bhavapannam Brahma Teja, that means what? That can also mean Vayu Bhavapannam Brahma. Tat Teja Asrujata. So it says this, that Brahman created fire. We say that means what? Vayu Bhavapannam Brahma. Brahman which has attained the state of Vayu, that created fire, that is quite alright. There is nothing to deny, nothing to negate it. There is nothing to contradict this interpretation. If your kalpana is not in any way contradicted by something else, then kalpana stands. If it is contradicted, then kalpana has to be discarded in favor of what is clearly stated. But here, nothing is clearly stated. Therefore, this kalpana that Vayu Bhavapannam Brahma Asruteja Asrujata Idi kalpyate tadapi. So when we do that kalpana, tadapi brahmajatvam tejasa na viruddhyate. Still, tat teja asrujata, Brahman created fire, it's quite alright. Because Brahman as Vayu created fire. So it's Brahman that has created fire, na viruddhyate. In that kalpana, there is no virodha. In your kalpana, there is virodha. Sakshat Parampariabhyam Karanatve Drishtantamaha. Bhashyakara gives a drishtanta of Sakshat Paramparaya Karanatve, how something is born immediately and in order or in sequence. We give the example of gold. From gold lump you make a bar, from that you make a rod and so forth. That's the parampara. So Sakshat and parampara. So even then you can say that chain is born of gold, because ultimately gold which assumed the state of ring, that created from that the chain is created. Therefore you can say chain is created from rings. You can also say chain is created from gold. Then it's not contradicting. So Bhashyakara says, Yatha tasya shrutam tasya dadhi tasya amiksha ityadi. Tasya means dheno, se ratna tasya dheno. Shruta means taptam kshiram. This word is new for us. So he says taptam kshiram. From that cow we have the hot milk. From that what? Tasya dadhi. From that cow we have dadhi, meaning curd. Also tasya. Tasya amiksha. From that we have the paneer or the cheese. In each case, tasya is the fifth case. However, there is a sequence. What is it? So, tasya dhenoho shrutam taptam kshiram sakshat karyam. First tasya is the apadana panchami sakshat karyam. That warm milk is directly from cow. Dadhyadikam tu parampariyajam. Whereas dadhi, the curd, and then the cheese or paneer are by parampara. So dadi samsrustam kashinakshiram amiksha. Amiksha also is a new word, so Tikakara explains. Dadi samsrustam kashinakshiram amiksha. So mixed with dadi, that hard milk, which is what we call paneer, I guess, that's called amiksha. Tasya kshirasya dadni sakshat karanatvevi gavyam dadi iti prayoga dushta tatha atrapi ityartha. So what does Bhashyakara mean here? So says Nyayana, tatra kshirasya dadni sakshat karanatvevi. So what is curd? Curd is directly created from milk. And still panchagavya, This is a common expression, panchagavya. So what is Panchagavya? The milk, the curd, and then the butter, and then the cow dung and the cow urine. So these are called Panchagavya. In that, Gavya means what? Born of cow. So Dadi also is included as Panchagavya. And butter also is, or ghee also is Panchagavya. Although ghee has its source directly in butter, or butter has its source directly in curd, see, it's called Gavya. So just because it is called Gavya does not mean that it is directly created from cow, it can be sequence also. Similarly, even though it is said that fire is born of Brahman, it can be sequence also in this manner. Says Ratnavara, Brahmana, Vayubhave, Manamaha. That Brahman became Vayu. How do you say Brahman became Vayu? So Pramanamaha, there the Shruti is stated here. So you say that Brahman became space and Brahman became Vayu, then Brahman became, fire. So on what basis do you say that? So Darshayati, Bhashyakara says, Darshayati cha Brahmanaha Vikaratmana Avasthanam Tadatmanam Swayam Kuruta Iti. Darshayati, Brahma also, that Brahman undergoes modification, the Shruti says herself. So Brahman became space and Brahman became air and Brahman became fire, Brahman became everything, Shruti says that. Tathacha darshayati cha brahmana vikaratmana avasthanam, how Brahman becomes modified to become this universe. Tad atmanam swam akuruta. Tad atmanam swam akuruta. That means Brahman. That Brahman itself created itself as this universe. Brahman created itself as his universe. Meaning that Brahman got modified as his universe. And universe includes the space and fire, air and fire and everything. Therefore, that statement clearly says that Brahman has become modified as this universe, including space and air and fire. So that Brahman gets modified is not a problem. Brahman becomes space is not a problem because it says Brahman alone has become everything. Parampariyasyapi tajjatva vyapadeshe smriti maha. Smriti also says that even though there is a parampara, still you can say that it is born of Brahman. Just as the curd is born of milk, still you say it is gavyam, born of cow. And so, tat teja sujata, even though fire is born of in parampara and sequence, it can be said that it is born of Brahman. So another, and Smriti also says, Bhagavad Gita also says, Tathacha Ishvara Smaranam Bhavati Buddhir Jnanam Sammoha Ityadi Anukramya Bhavanti Bhava Bhutana Matta Eva Prasagvidaha Iti. Tathacha Ishvara Smaranam Bhavati. This is Smriti by Ishvara, by none other than Lord Krishna. Buddhir Jnanam Asammoha Kshama Satyam Damashamaha Sukham Dukkham Bhavo Bhavaha Bhayam Chabha Mevacha Ahimsa Samatatusti Tapodanam Yasho Yashah Bhavanti Bhava Bhutanam Matta Eva Prasagvidaha. So Lord Krishna stated many bhava, many states of mind. Buddhi is one state of mind where there is a determination. Jnanam, where there is knowledge. Asammoha, so lack of delusion. Or freedom from delusion, destruction of delusion, etc. Then tapodanam yasho yasha bhavanti bhava bhutanam. Ited Anukramya, all of these bhavas are stated and says Matteva Prasagvidaha Bhavaha. All these manifold bhavas, the states of mind, all of them are from me, Lord Krishna says. So, Bhashyakara says, Yadyapi Buddhyadeha Svakaranebhya Pratyaksham Bhavanto Drishyante Tathapi Sarvasya Bhavajatasya Sakshat Pranadyava Ishvara Vamshatvat. Yadyapi Buddhyadaya, Buddhi is a state of mind. So Buddhi is a direct product of mind, not of Brahman, or Ishvara. So Yadyapi says Ratna Nayana Antahkaranadibhya Svakaranebhya Buddhyadinam Ayashontanam Utpatti Darshanat. So we know that Buddhi is Adhyavasayatmika Antahkarana Vritti is a state of Antahkarana of nature of Adhyavasaya or nature of determination. So Buddhi is directly a product of Antahkarana. It's a state of mind. So Antahkaranadibhya Svakaranebhya Buddhyadinam, beginning from Buddhi, and then what? Ayashontanam Sukham Dukkham Bho Bhava Bhayam Chavamevacha Ahimsa Samatatushti Tapodanam Yasha Ayasha, all the way up to Ayasha. Utpatti Darshana, all of these states, these are all vrittis, all are products of the states of mind. Matteva, then still Lord Krishna says, they are all born of me. Iti avadharanam ayuktam. Looks like it is not right. So Yadyapi, that's what Bhashyakara said, Yadyapi Buddhyadaya. So even though all they are created from their own causes directly, Tathavi Sarvasya Bhavajatasya, even then, whatever exists, Sarvasya Bhavajatasya, whatever exists, Sakshat Pranadyava, Sakshat immediately, Pranadya in sequence, so in order. Ishvara Svamshatya, ultimately everything is born of Ishvara. So Brahma is born directly from Ishvara, then Brahma, then other things came, but still Brahma is not apart from Ishvara, therefore ultimately everything is born of Ishvara. Sakshat, Brahma is born Sakshat. Pranadya, then all Prajapatis, etc., they came in sequence. But then they are all from Ishvara, there is no question about it. Therefore, you say different gotras are stayed. Kashyapa Gotropannam, Kashyapa is what, how many thousand years earlier, but still Parampara. Same Kashyapa is, you can see his blood flowing through all these generations. So Pranadya means Parampara iti avata. Says Ratnava Pranadya Paramparaya Ishvara Vamshatvad Tajjatvad Paramakarnantara Nirasartham Avadharanam Yuktamiti Sheshaha. Matta eva prasagvida. Lord Krishna says, Matta eva prasagvida. All of them are born of me and from nothing else. Mattah paratanam nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Dhananjaya, there is no cause other than me. So that evakara is there. So says Ratnaprabha, Pranadya means paramparaya, Ishvara vamshatvat, tajjatvat. Therefore either directly or immediately or mediately. It is all born of Ishvara. Paramakarnantara nirasatham. There is no karanam other than Ishvara. So matta eva, from me alone everything is born, and that way any other cause is excluded. Evakara is there to exclude everything else. So Lord Krishna excludes any cause other than himself by the use of this word eva. Avadharanam yuktam iti shesha. So says Nayana, Parampare Vishatvam tat teja asujata iti shrutehi uktam. Tat teja asujata is parampare vishayam, meaning that it says in one by one they are all born of Brahman. Not Brahman created them. One by one they are born of Brahman. Idanim idam sarvam asrujata. But how about this statement? All of this, Brahman created all of this. Ityadi shruteha api parampare vishayatvam eshitavyam. Even when it says Brahman tad jalan, Brahman created everything, that also can be interpreted that it created in sequence. Etena Samashakana says, Etena akramavat srishtivadinyah Shrutayah Vyakhyatah. Etena, by this discussion. So by this, in the same manner, so by this discussion also, you have explained all of the Shrutis which do not specifically talk about sequence. So, akramatvad srishtivadinya, akramavat srishti. The statement which say that there is no krama or sequence, those srishtivadinya, shrutaya, those statements of Shruti which do not mention krama or sequence, they are also explained by this explanation. So says the 9th, Tarvasya Sakshat Brahmajatva Bhave Katham Tasam Upattihi. How do you say? If everything is not of the Brahman, then how can this Shruti that is created everything, how can that apply? Tatra Tasamiti. Or as Ratnavara says, Etat Padarthamaha Tasam. Etena means what? What is Etena? Is the third case of Etat. So Etat Padarthamaha means Etena, that word is explained. Tasamiti, Bhashyakara says. Tasam sarvatha upapattehe. So those Shruti statements which do not mention order clearly can be interpreted either way. Brahman created everything. You can say that everything is directly born of Brahman, or Brahman created everything in order. Both explanations can apply to this statement of Shruti which do not mention the krama or order. However, kramavat srishtivadini nam tu anyatha anupattehe. Wherever krama is stated, vayo agni, then you cannot explain it differently. Where krama or sequence is not stated, it is possible to interpret that it directly created or created in sequence. Both explanations can apply where krama or sequence is not mentioned. However, where sequence is mentioned, you cannot say that it created without sequence. So, that vayo agni is very specific. Meaning that where sequence is stated, that Shruti cannot be interpreted differently. Where Shruti sequence is not stated, it can be interpreted either way. And therefore, so this is stronger where krama is stated, becomes stronger because it cannot be interpreted differently. Says Nyayana, Sarvatha Sakshat Paramparayava Sarvasya Brahmajatva Matrena Akravadininam Shrutinam Upapattehe. Akravadininam Shrutinam. The Shruti, the statements of Upanishad, which do not talk of krama or sequence, they can also be logically explained as creation in sequence. Utpatte itar shruti vashat paramparameva ashrayam. But itar shruti, where krama is stated, the parampara has to be accepted, and therefore both the statements will then be interpreted as parampara. It says, Kramashrutinameva Akramashruti Vashat Nayanam Kim Nasyat. So, if you say that where krama is mentioned, it is stronger than where krama is not mentioned, why not the other way? Where krama is not mentioned, why not that be interpreted as without krama? So, Bhashyakara said, Krama Srishtivadini Nam tu Anyatha Anupattehe. because when Krama is stated, it does not lend itself for any other explanation. So anyatha anupatti means anyatha paramparyam antarena anupatte. Without parampara, that Kramavadi Shruti cannot be explained. Iti. No sakshat karana vishyatvam iti shesha. Therefore, Brahman then cannot be sakshat karanam, paramparaya karanam. अव्यवधानेन ब्रह्मजत्व भावे कथम प्रतिज्ञा. But one statement was made that ek vijnanena sarva vijnanam, that by knowing Brahman everything is known, requires that everything must be born of Brahman. Then alone that pratigna proposition can be satisfied. So what about that? What if things are not directly born of Brahman? Can that pratigna be satisfied? So Bhashyakara says pratigna vedi. Pratignapi sadvamshatva matram apekshate na avyaveda janyatvam iti avirodha. Pratigna also, the proposition that everything is known by knowing Brahman, that also sadvamshatva matram. It only expects that everything is born of Brahman one way or the other. Vamshatvam, even indirectly also, indirectly means in sequence also is born of Brahman. It is still quite alright, because as we said, whether you say that the chain is born of ring or chain is born of gold, so even if you say chain is born of ring, then it's still paramparaya in sequence, it is born of gold. Therefore, by knowing gold, all ornaments are known. That statement will not be affected even if the ornaments are not directly made of gold, made in sequence. Sat vamshatvam matram apekshate. All it requires is sat vamshatvam. Sat, it must be vamsha. It must be born of sat in one way or the other. Na avyaveda janyatvam. It doesn't require that everything must be immediately born of Brahman. Even if it is immediately born, then also that pratigna can be satisfied. So says Ratnava, akramashrudinam balavat kramashrudi anusarena ekavakyatvat. So akramashrudinam balavat, so kramashruti is balavati. Where the shruti which says krama is stronger than the shruti that is not, meaning that akramashruti must be interpreted in keeping with kramashruti. Where order is not stated, must be interpreted in keeping with the Shruti where order is stated. So, Ekavakyatva, then both the Shrutis have the unity of purport, Ekavakyata. Therefore, Vyat Vayu Dvara Tejah Karane Brahmani Samanvayati. Therefore, ultimately, Brahman is the cause through the agency of Vayu and Vyat. So, through Vayu and Vyat, Brahman becomes the cause of Tejas. And that way, when Brahman is the cause, the ultimately Brahmani Samanvaya. There is a reconciliation or consistency with reference to Brahman, it is Siddham, so that is established. So that's Siddhanta. So every adhikarana must end with iti Siddham. Because all the five aspects are stated here: Vishaya, Samshaya, Uttarpaksha, Purvapaksha, Uttarpaksha and Siddhanta. So that way, this element Tejaha or the fire is discussed in this adhikarana. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guratmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagi Vyakta-dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.